trickery is this? Mal'Ganis! I don't know how you survived, but
Calm yourself, Prince Arthas. I am Tichondrius. Like Mal'Ganis, I am a Dreadlord. But I am not your enemy. In truth, I've come to congratulate you.
Congratulate me?
By killing your own father and delivering this land to the Scourge, you have passed your first test. The Lich King is pleased with your enthusiasm.
Yes. I've damned everyone and everything I've ever loved in his name. And I still feel no remorse, no shame, no pity.
The rune blade that you carry was forged by the Lich King and empowered to steal souls. Yours was the first one it claimed.
Then I'll make do without one. What is the Lich King's will?
The cult of the damned must be rallied once again. Many of the acolytes have been in hiding amongst the populace. Once you've rallied them, I will give you further instructions.
Tread lightly. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Ah, at last. Frostmourne hungers. Finally.
Greetings, great lord. Our master, Kel'Thuzad, told us that you would come.
Kel'Thuzad? How could he have known?
I live
Be wary.
only to serve. If the townsfolk see your undead minions, they'll call the local guards to stop you.
This is more like it.
The undead! Sound the
Frostmourne
alarm!
hungers.
You will know endless torment.
Ah, at last. Finally. Ah, at last.
The dead have risen again.
Frostmourne hungers.
Guards!
Seek out the local graveyards. Those buried there will serve you well. My sight is yours. I go unseen.
No one orders me around. Ah, at last. Speak, fool. For the Lich King. What is it now? Frostmourne hungers. At last. Tread lightly. Speak, fool. No one orders me around. Finally. Frostmourne hungers.
The undead! Sound the alarm!
Frostmourne hungers.
I bow
This is more
to your
like it.
will.
Ah, at last. Frostmourne hungers. Ah, at last. Finally. I'll make sure you suffer. Now, Frostmourne. Ah, at last.
Your pain shall be legendary.
Finally. Frostmourne hungers. Ah, at last. Frostmourne hungers. Finally.
I bow to your
Frostmourne hungers. Finally.
How could you murder your own father?
This is more like it. Tread lightly. Ah, at last. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. No one orders me around.
At last.
Must feed.
Tread lightly. Finally. Now,
Help!
Frostborn.
The undead have returned.
At last. Finally. This is more like it.
I live
Frostborn
only to
hunger.
serve,
At last. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it.
Lord.
At last. This is more like it. At last.
Your pain shall be legendary.
Finally. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it.
I live
Frostborn
only to
hunger.
serve. The dead have risen again. Guards!
Finally. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Finally. At last. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. At last.
The undead! Sound the
Now,
alarm!
Frostborn. I'll make sure you suffer. Frostborn hungers.
Help! The undead have returned.
Faithless coward. At last. Finally.
You will know endless, you bastard.
At last. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. At last.
I'm in luck. These graves were dug recently. Arise in the name of the Lich King.
Last. No one orders me around. Frostborn
I bow
hungers.
to your will.
Finally. At last. Finally. This is more like it.
I bow to
At
your
last.
will. Help!
Finally.
The undead have returned.
At last. What is it now? Finally. Frostborn hungers. Finally. At last. Frostborn hungers.
Say your prayers. Bandits, run!
Finally. Now, Frostborn.
You will know endless torment.
This is more like it. Finally.
I'll make sure you suffer.
This is more like it.
My life for
Frostborn
Nazul.
hungers. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. Now, Frostborn.
My life for Nazul.
Finally. Tread lightly. At last. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. What is it now? Tread lightly. At last.
Our forces are under attack.
Speak, fool. Finally. Tread lightly. No one orders me around. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. At last. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. At last. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it. At last. Frostmourne hungers. At last. Finally.
The damned stand ready.
This is more like it. Finally. At last. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. At last. Frostmourne hungers.
The undead! Sound the alarm!
Your pain shall be legend. You've betrayed us all!
Frostmourne hungers. At last.
I'll make sure you suffer.
Finally.
Mercy, my lord!
Now, Frostmourne.
My life for
This is more like it.
Mercy, my lord!
Finally.
The undead! Sound the alarm!
Kill them all! Speak, fool.
No one orders me around. This is more like it. For the Lich King.
I'll make sure you suffer.
Now, Frostmourne. At last. What is it now? Frostmourne hunger. Finally.
I live only
at
to
last.
serve.
Finally. Tread lightly.
I live stand
This
ready
is
to
more
serve,
like
great lord.
Frostmourne hungers. At last. Finally. Frostmourne
Mercy,
hungers.
my lord!
At last. This is more like it.
I bow to your will.
Finally. At last.
The undead! Sound the alarm!
Finally.
I bow to your
Frostmourne
will.
hungers.
I'll make sure you suffer. Faithless coward.
Finally. This is more like it. At last. Frostmourne hungers.
You should burn in hell.
What is it now? At last. This is more like it. Finally. At last. This is more like it. Tread lightly.
Must be.
No one orders me around. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. At last. Frostmourne hungers. Finally. Frostmourne hungers. This is more like it. Frostmourne hungers. Ah, at last. Frostmourne hungers. Finally.
The undead! The undead!
Sound
have
the
returned.
alarm!
Frostmourne hungers.
The undead!
Now, Frostmourne.
Sound the alarm!
You will end this. The damned stand ready. Finally. Ah, at last. Finally.
Well done, Death Knight. The cult is nearly assembled.
Lordaeron lies in ashes. What good are these cultists to us now?
They will aid you in your next undertaking.
And what's that?
You will go to Underhall and recover the remains of the Acolyte's former master, the necromancer, Kel'Thuzad.